Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 196. Without any delay, start explanation. However, even the powerful Tang sect had no way to confirm the situation in the small world due to the change in the space-time properties of that realm. It was already an impressive act for them to utilize a small world, so how could they search for a fallen small world then? However, a month was still wasted and they would need to return today. Gu stood quietly on the ship's bow as she looked into the distance. Ever since Tang Wulin parted ways with the group, she sank into deep silence. She was even quieter after discovering Tang Wulin's disappearance, to the point that she would not utter even a single word throughout the day. Although everyone had an anxious heart, they were truly helpless when it came to a small world that had gone missing. There was absolutely no way to find him. He's a cat with 9 lives. The captain will be fine for sure, Yu Jingyu sighed as he spoke. Xu Xiaoyan pouted her lips. We shouldn't have come on this trip if we knew that it would go so badly. Yuan and Yehui sighed before speaking. What's the point of saying this now? He's already missing. I don't understand why he left us in the beginning and refused to join us in our travel. At that moment, everyone's gaze fell on Gu in unison. Although they did not exactly understand what was going on, they could roughly guess that Tang Wulin's departure was related to Gu. It was only because both of them kept to themselves that everyone else remained in guessing. Xie could not help but ask Gu, "Hey, Tang Wulin has been missing for so long, aren't you even a little anxious?" Gu looked toward him as she suddenly spoke. He's going to be fine. Xie's eyes reddened when Gu said that. What do you mean he's going to be fine? He has been missing for so long. What did you do aside from keeping to yourself? You barely even uttered a word. We've all done our best to look for him, and yet, you were so quiet you didn't even say anything. It wasn't like this when we were still in the academy. Why have you changed into this? That's enough. Yuan and Yehui tugged at Xie's arm. Although he was a little impulsive, he definitely managed to voice out some of their companions' thoughts. Gu had truly changed ever since they arrived on Star Luo continent. I'll be waiting for his return to Shrek. Gu seemed completely unaffected by Xie's words as she muttered to herself. Huff, 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 huff. At this exact moment, Tang Wulin was gasping for big gulps of air, but his eyes were filled with excitement. The entire Dragon Clan graveyard was now empty and spacious. There was only one final skeleton that lay before him. It was also the largest one amongst all the true dragon skeletons which belonged to the Mountain Dragon King. The Mountain Dragon King was not only large in its overall volume, but every piece of its bone was also the largest among the rest in size. The high-density skeletons had an indescribable texture. It felt heavy, compressed, and it was as if every piece was a portion of mountain or river. Tang Wulin dismantled its skeleton with great effort and spent at least a dozen times longer than what he needed for the regular true dragon bones before he managed to place the bones into a deep hole he had dug. It was a 1,000-meter deep hole. After digging the hole, he lost track of how long he took to make that hole so deep. The soul skills he created and those from his bloodline were used thousands, possibly even tens of thousands of times from when he started burying the bones. At this point in time, it had already become second nature to his body. Goodbye? I'm finally leaving when I'm done burying you. Tang Wulin looked at the Mountain Dragon King skeleton and smiled. Then, he began to push the surrounding soil into the giant hole. Yes, this is the final push. Once he completed the burial of the Mountain Dragon King skeleton, his vow would be complete. The dreary aura within the Dragon Clan graveyard had already vanished. Tang Wulin made some changes to the sides of the tombstones by planting small plants beside it. After planting them, they seemed to be growing extremely well, and they added a touch of green along with a source of life to the Dragon Clan graveyard. Hum. A ball of yellow radiance condensed by the Mountain Dragon King's side. Another dragon soul appeared just like the day before. It dashed at Tang Wulin once again. The dragon soul was still humongous. It still had a height of more than 30 meters despite only having 10% of the Mountain Dragon King's strength. It had no wings, so it seemed a little clumsy as it crawled out of the hole. Tang Wulin could not help laughing. I've been telling you since yesterday that there's no need for that. Keep the energy for yourself. I can leave when I'm done burying you. The humongous dragon soul arrived before Tang Wulin's face. It did not open its mouth, but its deep eyes were filled with the light of intellect. Its hind legs began bending as it slowly kneeled before Tang Wulin. The dragon soul lowered its head and rubbed its humongous head against his body. Then, streams of yellow light instantly began surging into Tang Wulin's body like a swarm of bees. The dragon soul formed from the mountain dragon king was the densest among the other dragon bones. Tang Wulin would not starve or feel any thirst for the next 7 days and nights after absorbing its dragon soul just once. His body felt bloated once again, and the soil in his surroundings seemed like they were being drawn into the giant hole on their own accord. Tang Wulin smiled. It had proven itself as the mountain dragon king. Even the remnants remaining in its skeleton was capable of such powers. The giant hole was gradually filled while the mountain dragon king's enormous body gradually disappeared, and with that, the final dragon was buried. The mountain dragon king's dragon soul gradually faded as well while its energy was continuously absorbed into Tang Wulin's body. Ah! Tang Wulin suddenly let out a gentle sigh because he saw a translucent bone that was gradually appeared in the mountain dragon king's gradually fading soul. The bone seemed slightly peculiar with the endless striations on its surface along with a gentle glow that made it incomparably dazzling. This is a soul bone. Hey, you've left out a piece of your own bone. I'll bury it later. Tang Wulin hastily spoke to the giant hole that was gradually being filled. However, the soul of the mountain dragon king that was almost faded shook its head at him. It raised its front claw and pointed it at him. Then, it pointed toward itself once more before nodding at him. Tang Wulin asked in astonishment, "Are you saying that you want to gift it to me?" The mountain dragon king nodded. Tang Wulin could see an intense and extreme kindness in its eyes. Whoosh! The crystal-clear soul bone shimmering with a dazzling radiance flew to Tang Wulin. He did not manage to react as it surged into his body following the dragon soul's energy. Within a split second, Tang Wulin could only feel his body turning heavy as he subconsciously sat on the ground. His entire now felt frozen, and the only thing he felt was as if he had turned into a mountain. A mountain connected to the ground with an endless surge of energy surging toward it from every direction before they fused into his body. At this moment, he seemed to hear the giant dragons cheer with joyous dragon roars from beneath the ground. It was as if they were thanking his deeds. The dreariness was now gone as they had finally found a home that truly belonged to them. Tang Wulin smiled. Yes, they were now resting in peace in a quiet place. It finally allowed them to rest after their death regardless of how they were when they were alive. They could finally regard this stretch of land as their home. He hoped that nobody would ever come and disturb them in the future any longer. Tang Wulin pursed his lips with a gentle smile on his face. My friends, I'm not sure how I should address all of you. I've been spending all this time together with you, and although I've been doing the same thing every single day, I've never felt a single dull moment for some reason. I can feel the emotional fluctuations radiating from every single one of you, and I can feel your pleasure, anger, sorrow, and joy. Thank you for keeping me company. Although I haven't the slightest idea how long I've been here, I'll never regret it. This moment, I'll remember for the rest of my life. He spread out the thought of his connection through the ground, and the entire dragon clan graveyard shook gently. With his closed eyes, Tang Wulin could not see the layer of mist that had risen from beneath the ground. Within it was countless colors that eventually converged and turned into a 7-colored halo that spun soundlessly around his body. A sensation filled with a gentle kindness surrounded him, and it was as if there were countless dragons that were now roaring out of joy and happiness, not out of sadness. Finally, the 7-colored halo converged into the shape of a water droplet that had 9-colored crystal pearls in it. Then, it descended downward and dropped onto Tang Wulin's right wrist, causing a 9-colored chain to appear and connect soundlessly before it transformed into a bracelet around his wrist that exuded a faint radiance. When it was complete, Tang Wulin's body shuddered ever so slightly. His spiritual world felt as if it was being torn open within that split second, causing his spiritual power that was originally stagnant to be elevated several folds. It did not take long before Tang Wulin felt like his world was growing wider. Although he was not seeing with his eyes, everything around him became clearer. He could clearly sense his bones getting coated with a dazzling light. This included his spine, sternum, and ribs, making it feel as if he had just donned battle armor made of diamond onto his torso. This indescribable sensation filled him to the brim with strength. It was the torso soul bone. The Mountain Dragon King gifted him with an impressive torso soul bone. There were several types of precious soul bones that were capable of fusing with a soul master's body. These were the skull, torso, and external soul bone. They were the rarest and most precious soul bones, even without considering their age. The external soul bone was precious because it existed independently of the other 6 more commonly seen soul bones, making it extremely rare and unusual. On the other hand, the skull and torso soul bone were the most beneficial to a soul master's elevation and were also the hardest to obtain. The Mountain Dragon King was a creature with the most powerful defenses from the dragon god's legacy. The torso soul bone gifted by it was undoubtedly the highest grade among all the ones that existed. Tang Wulin's defense would be elevated to an entirely new level with it, and in fact, it might even make the fusing of the soul bone with the Golden Dragon King seal much easier in the future. Aside from sensing the additional soul bone in his body, Tang Wulin's senses continued extending outward and clearly reflected everything in the external world onto his mind. It was so clear that he no longer felt the need to see, but instead, he only had to feel. This was a clear sign that his spiritual power had been elevated to an entirely new level. One would require their spiritual power to reach level 500 before they could reach the Spirit Sea. This was an important threshold and a benchmark that would determine if one could become a high-ranking soul master for most people. One would not be able to fuse with a powerful soul bone without adequately powerful spiritual power. However, Tang Wulin had already achieved the Spirit Sea level much earlier, and his current breakthrough at this exact moment felt like something more than just the Spirit Sea. It felt like an abyssal prison. If one spirit was the world, then the upper plane would be the heavens while the lower plane would be hell. Everywhere his consciousness reached was his. This was the Spirit Abyss. The realm that was reputed to be the ultimate limit of a human's spiritual power. Tang Wulin was only acquainted with 2 soul masters who managed to reach the Spirit Abyss at this age. The first was Ji Yu, while the other was Dai Yuna, who possessed a spiritual power martial soul. Top-grade spiritual power was the foundation of possessing a legendary spirit soul. When a soul master reached this realm, they could fuse with either an orange or red spirit soul of any level, and if one fused with an orange or red spirit soul, then one would be able to fuse with other spirit soul abilities that were on par with the Spirit Sea. However, if one did not possess an orange or red spirit soul, it would still be possible to fuse with a maximum of 5 spirit souls of any color without being limited by rank. Under regular circumstances, the Spirit Abyss was already the ultimate limit of a human being, but at the same time, it also signified that a soul master would no longer be affected by worries of spiritual power once they achieved this level. They would already possess sufficient spiritual power to sustain their cultivation to the level of a title d'Oluor regardless of what happened. Tang Wulin never expected that his spiritual power would achieve such a breakthrough despite neglecting his spiritual power for such a long time while he was in the Dragon Valley. This was clearly due to the generous contribution of the numerous true dragon skeletons. His consciousness gradually faded as he entered deep meditation once more. He would need some time to completely fuse his body with the Mountain Dragon King's diamond torso soul bone and also to adapt to his newfound spiritual power, which was now at the Spirit Abyss. The Spirit Sea required 1 spiritual power to be level 500 while the Spirit Abyss required spiritual power as high as level 5000. At the Spirit Abyss, a soul master would almost definitely become a title d'Oluor in the future as long as their body remained in good condition. That being said, would anything even go wrong with Tang Wulin's body? The answer is a resounding no. In Shrek Academy. The academy had appeared very calm for the past 2 years, and everything was in proper order. Ever since Shrek Academy's sudden announcement of the candidates for the new generation of the Shrek 7 monsters 2 years ago, there were changes that happened in the academy. The first grade class that was reputed to be most outstanding had already advanced to the 2nd grade. Even the core students like Ji Yu, Yi Xinglan, Shu Lixi, Xie Xie, and Xu Xiaoyan had been received into the inner court. There were also the class monitors Yuan and Yehui and Yu Jingyu who had advanced to third grade class that managed to get into the inner court as well. Soon, Shrek Academy announced that these 7 people would become the new Shrek 7 monsters. They were allowed to accept any challenge from 6-ringed Soul Masters for a year. If they remained undefeated by teams of Soul Masters with a 6-ringed cultivation base or lower within a year, then the new generation of the Shrek 7 monsters would be cemented in stone. According to Shrek Academy's rules, the title would always remain with this generation's Shrek 7 monsters once confirmed. That is, of course, until they choose to give up the title, when they become a Sea God Pavilion's member, or only during death. Because of this, Shrek Academy was always exceedingly cautious when it came to selecting a new generation of Shrek 7 monsters. They would only make the decision when geniuses with extraordinary talents appeared or when someone made an enormous contribution to the Academy. The Academy did not mention much about the contribution that this generation of Shrek 7 monsters made, but only informed that they guarded Shrek Academy's honor in the process of heading to Star Luo Empire, such that they made a permanent contribution to Shrek Academy. Naturally, there were some uncooperative people like those that had already entered the inner courts that encountered countless challenges during the following year. However, they still managed to defeat the formidable enemies they faced under GUU's leadership. A year ago, the title for the Shrek 7 monsters was finally confirmed. Life in the outer court went on as it did before. The current 2nd grade Class 1 was once the most outstanding disciples from 1st grade Class 1. Wu Sidua had taken the class monitor's position with Luo Guixing by his side as the vice monitor. 2nd grade Class 1 remained as outstanding as ever despite losing GUU and the rest. Wu Sidua, Luo Guixing, Xu Yucheng, Yang Nianxia, and Jing Iran had already become one-word battle armor masters and would only need to pass the inner court entry examination to become official inner court disciples this year. With their abilities, it was clear that their entrance to the inner court would only be a matter of time. Before the 2nd grade's term even ended, there were already more than 10 students who made it into the inner court, further proving the prowess of this batch of students. In Shrek Academy's inner court, GUU sat by the side of Sea God Lake. Her entire being seemed like it had already merged with the sky and water, being of the same color. As she gazed into the distance at Sea God Island in a daze, there was no way to tell what was she thinking. A figure swiftly came from the direction of Sea God's island. It had silver hair and purple eyes as it moved with the calm serenity of a god. Enea had grown after 3 years. She was already 16 years old this year and was even more astonishingly beautiful. She was reputed to be an unrivaled beauty that possessed beauty never before seen in Shrek Academy for 10,000 years. She was even crowned with the title of the #1 beauty in Shrek Academy. Enea landed gently next to GUU's side. Sea God Island was the home of the Sea God Pavilion's elders. Only certain heirs of the elders were allowed entry to the island, while ordinary inner disciples had to live and study on the outer regions of Sea God Island. The inner court afforded its residents more freedom to study compared to the outer court. Students were allowed to choose their subjects and make appointments to study with their teachers by themselves. They had an exceedingly high amount of freedom. Graduating from the inner court was also far easier. One could graduate just by becoming a 2-word battle armor master, but that was easier said than done. Every single student who managed to enter the inner court would never slack off at studying, but instead, they would work their hardest. Shrek Academy had always had a peculiar phenomenon. Very few students would be willing to leave after becoming 2-word battle armor masters in the inner court. They were even likely to be more willing to remain cultivating in the academy or become teachers in the academy. This virtuous cycle through 10,000 years was the exact reason why Shrek Academy was the power it was today. Enea appeared to have already grown into a big girl with a slim and tall figure. There was no way to tell about the age difference between both of them when she stood beside GUU. Although they stood side by side, no one spoke. Judging from their beauty, GUU was far behind Enea, or rather, it could be said that she was not even in the same league as Enea. However, at that moment, Enea was unable to even suppress GUU's beauty by a little when they stood together for some reason. When is he coming back? It has already been so long, Enea spoke coldly. I don't know. GUU shook her head. Enea suddenly retorted in rage, "You don't know? How can you say that? You said that he was fine and that he'd certainly return. Yet, it has already been a full 3 years since his disappearance and he hasn't returned to this day. Is it possible that you've already killed him?" Guu turned to look at Enea. "If I were to kill him, wouldn't you be able to sense that? Although I don't know why he hasn't returned as well, I can be certain that he's still alive. Perhaps, he's staying there to become a husband to another princess." Enea suddenly became quiet when she heard "princess's husband." She turned around and looked towards Sea God Island. "No. My brother isn't that kind of a person. He wouldn't fall for someone that easily. He'll certainly return. He's probably just caught up with something." Enea spoke with determination. Guu suddenly replied, "If he was to come back, does our bet still stand?" Enea spoke proudly, "Of course. I don't think you're capable of beating me." Guu did not utter a word as she remained expressionless. "However, I can't continue doing this anymore. There are too many things waiting for me to handle. You can remain here and act like a manager who does nothing, but I can't. You should understand the burden I'm shouldering. You refuse to bear it, so I'll have to bear it. I can only wait for another 3 months at most before I'll need to leave because I promised him that I'd accompany him to study in the inner court back in the beginning. He's the one who didn't return. He's the one who didn't fulfill his promise. That's why I'm leaving." Enea's body shuddered ever so slightly. Her gaze suddenly turned gentler. "You." Guu's lips abruptly cracked into a smile, but it was a slightly dull smile. "Can you talk me into changing my mind about leaving? I bet you can't, right? The conclusions we've drawn are still different. You're only avoiding the matter, but what you don't understand is, this is what we should be doing, dot." Enea replied, "Then what if my brother comes back? Will you still leave if he's back?" "Yes." Guu spoke without the slightest hesitation, "I can't wait with everybody else any longer. Time waits for no man. I have many things that I must do. The Spirit Pagoda has been hoping that I'll take a position there." Enea took a deep breath. "All right then. Go if you must go. I'll always be waiting here, waiting for his return. Since you're sure that he's fine, then he'll certainly come back. I'm confident." Guu smiled, but she held her tongue as she ran her fingers through her hair before she turned around to walk toward the main building of the inner court. Enea smiled as she watched Guu leave. "You're destined to lose to me as long as he comes back. Actually, don't you know? You've already lost since the very beginning. Or rather, you too scared to admit that?" Enea looked up to the sky. "Brother, when will you return? You can't possibly stay in Star Luo Empire and become the princess's husband, right?" At Shrek Academy's main entrance, or more accurately, Shrek City's main entrance, an elegant Soul car slowly stopped as a person alighted from the right. The person was tall and stalwart as a mountain. He was bald and dressed in a well-fitted suit, so he appeared to be extremely imposing. He circled to the back of the car and arrived at the left door before he opened the passenger door. First, a pair of slim and long legs stepped out from the car. The legs were elegantly long, had a milky white complexion and exuded a crystal-clear radiance. Following that, a white dress appeared as a maiden alighted from the car. She seemed petite as she stood beside the bald, brawny man with the big curls in her hand draping down her back. She seemed to exude an uncommon prestige. There was hope on her exquisite face, and as she looked at the sign on the door that stood before her, there was an indescribable thirst that flashed across her eyes. The bald, brawny man walked toward Shrek City's main entrance. The place was open to the public except for their cars. It was clear that they had already inquired about this matter before arriving. There were another 2 staff dressed in uniform who were clearly from the federal government aside from the both of them. They came down from the car trailing behind and walked in quick strides toward the both of them before guiding them into Shrek City. Be it was the bald, brawny man or the white-dressed maiden, their faces were filled with curiosity as they walked into Shrek City. They were occasionally looking around. "Brother Long, this is such a bustling city. Dolor continent is truly more fun than where we come from, the maiden spoke. The bald brawny man nodded as his eyes shimmered with a scorching hot radiance. Shrek Academy is here. I wonder how miraculous this place is since it's known as the #1 academy in the continent. The maiden smiled shyly. It'll certainly be miraculous as long as he's here. The bald brawny man turned around and stared at her with a peculiar expression. Yuna, it has been over 3 years. You. The maiden shook her head. Brother Long, I've already known since the beginning. There's no need for you to console me either. I understand that you have good intentions, and I know that you've been really good to me all this time. However, I've already made up my mind, and I'll never change it. 3 years ago, I refused my betrothal by threatening them with my death. 3 years later, only I can dictate my destiny. Have you forgotten? Father had already removed me from the list of royalties out of shock and rage. My future children will never be members of the royal family any longer. If Tang Wulin was here, he would certainly realize that the white-dressed maiden was Star Luo Empire's snobbish little princess, Dai Yuna. On the other hand, the person she was with was Monster Academy's main pillar and was the one who held the reputation of being the #1 genius since millennia. He was the Dragon King, Long Yu. Long Yu spoke out of frustration. Yuna, His Majesty was only furious for a moment. Moreover, your fourth brother told you secretly that even if His Majesty refuses to forgive you, the first thing he would do when he became the crown prince in the future was to grant you a royal pardon. Dai Yuna smiled and spoke. How could I not know that? Father appeared to be shocked and furious on the surface just for show. He had no choice but to do so in order to uphold the royal dignity, but in reality, he was giving me freedom in disguise. As for whether my children will be a part of the royal family, that's not important. Perhaps I'll even stay behind in Dolor continent. Long Yu's gaze turned cold as he clenched his fists tight subconsciously. He truly wished that he could ferociously beat up this guy. Let's go. We'll go to Shrek Academy immediately. I'll never leave if I don't see him this time. In Shrek Academy's dormitory, Xie sat on the sofa in his room in a daze. His gaze appeared slightly sluggish from the very beginning, and he had been acting like this for the past few days, even to the point that he stopped the painstaking cultivation he usually undertook. Naturally, there was a world of difference in the treatment he received upon entering the inner court compared to the outer court. Everyone had their own private rooms, and even the quality of their diet was increased many times over. Moreover, it was provided by the academy for free. It could be said that the experience between the outer and the inner court was akin to the distance between hell and heaven. Every auxiliary cultivation facilities over here were the best of the best, along with only the best teachers. Wu Zhongkong did not join them in the inner court, but he remained on the outer court to continue teaching in 2nd grade class 1. However, he had announced that he would not be a teacher any longer after this final batch of students. He had chosen to remain in the inner court to cultivate and study battle armor. Bang! 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 The sound of someone knocking on the door echoed. Xie was startled, but he reacted to the situation immediately. He hastily stood up and opened the door. It was Yu Jingyu coming through the door. He pushed Xie, who standing in front of the door, away as he walked right into the room. Compared to 3 years ago, they have all grown up. Xie was more than 1.8 meters tall, and Yu Jingyu had surpassed 1.85 meters. Both of them were strikingly handsome. Their countenances were, however, quite different. Most times, Xie spotted a delinquent smirk on his face, whereas Yu Jingyu exuded a wholesome demeanor. Among the inner court disciples, they definitely attracted attention. They were part of the Shrek 7 monsters after all. What are you doing? Yu Jingyu surveyed the messy room while covering his nose. He went over and opened the windows to let fresh air, which had the humid smell of the sea god lake, into the room. Xie leaned back onto the sofa. He looked forlorn and thoroughly bored. Are you sick? Yu Jingyu shot him a glance and asked pointedly. Bickering had become an essential part of their daily routine, but they were still the best of friends. They had similar personalities, although each of them was also unique in their own ways. Still, Xie had a more pronounced character. Xie chuckled wryly. All right, that's enough. What do you want to say? If not, don't come here to disturb me. Go away. Oh, Yu Jingyu retorted, someone's in a bad mood today? What malady are you suffering from this time? Why don't we have a quick spar, just you and me? Xie laid down on the sofa. Not interested. Yu Jingyu's gaze flickered slightly. He walked up to him and chuckled. I know what's wrong with you. It's because of Yuinan, no? What a wimp. Come to think of it, you're hopeless. You've been pursuing Yuinan all this while, but you still haven't gotten her to accept you. Even I'm at a loss as to how I should advise you. Scram! Xie shouted angrily. Yu Jingyu shoved his hands into his pockets. TSK, don't you think I know what you're thinking of? We're coming of age this year, and the Sea God Lake's Date Festival is coming soon. All inner court disciples above 18 years of age are eligible to participate. Are you worried that someone else might win Yuinan's heart, or that you won't have a chance? Xie grunted. With these handsome looks of mine, it's impossible for me to not have a chance. Even if she had to choose, Yuinan will certainly choose me, and me alone. If she doesn't choose me, the others won't stand a chance either. Yu Jingyu chuckled. I don't think so. There are plenty of seniors from the inner court that are good-looking and powerful. Not only that, many among them are two-word battle armor masters. How can you be so sure Yuinan will choose you? It's anyone's game. Xie glared at him. I'll fight it out with whoever dares compete with me. Yu Jingyu said, get a grip, man. With these qualities of yours, you sure you want to fight it out with the others? If I were Yuinan, I won't bother with you. You deserve this. Xie leaped to his feet abruptly like a gamecock. We're not friends anymore. Yu Jingyu sneered. Suit yourself. Do you know the most important thing about pursuing a girl? Xie replied, one must be shameless, right? Aren't you such a person? Get lost, you. All right, I'll be going off. I won't teach you then. As he said this, Yu Jingyu turned around and walked away. Xie hastily stepped forward with a great stride and pulled on Yu Jingyu. Brother, you win. Teach me, quick. I admit that I'm in the wrong. Isn't that good enough? Yu Jingyu chuckled and said, idiot, it's confidence. If you don't bloody believe in yourself, how can you hope that the girl will think you're reliable? It's true that you must be brazen, but you cannot just think that you're brazen. You must act brazen and be confident of yourself. You've spent a lot of time pestering Yuinan, no? Yet, how many times have you actually confessed to her? Isn't the Sea God's Lake Date Festival a perfect opportunity for that? Even if you failed in the end, you must at least let it be known to all the inner court seniors that whoever dares to compete for Yuinan's hand will have to fight with you to the death. You must state your intention. Even if Yuinan doesn't accept you, at least you'll have fewer rivals to worry about. Frankly, although Yuinan is beautiful, she possesses the Titan giant ape martial soul and is commonly seen brandishing two giant hammers. I don't think there are many who are interested to compete with you. As the saying went, a few wise words woke up the dreamer. Upon hearing what Yu Jingyu said, Xie immediately felt enlightened. You're right. Why haven't I thought of that? I've been thinking all along that she'll reject me. What's there to fear about being rejected? I have nothing to fear once I declare my intention. Big brother, I owe you one. After I figure out my plan for the date festival, I'll treat you to a big meal. Xie's fighting spirit was instantly reignited. He had always been one who would not admit defeat easily. Somehow, he got himself into a blind alley and felt that he would not stand a fighting chance with Yuinan, which gave him such agony. The Sea God's Lake Date Festival was a grand gathering where only Shrek Academy's inner court disciples could participate, and the participants had to be over 18 years old. This tradition had existed since 10,000 years ago. The Shrek Academy students were outstanding, which made it difficult for them to find a partner who would be compatible with them outside of the academy. That was why many of them would select their partners during the Sea God's Lake Date Festival. The most popular pair were Spirit Ice Dolor, Huoyin Hao, and Dragon Butterfly Dolor, Tang Wutong back then. They became the favorite gossip of the generation. It was also the liveliest period in Shrek Academy's inner court when the Sea Gods Lake Date Festival was about to be held. Outer court students who were over 18 could also attend the festival. This was an exciting time for the students. If they wanted to be happily married in the academy, they would have to work hard in their cultivation and attain the rank of a one-word battle armor master as soon as possible. Only then would they have the opportunity to take part in the Sea Gods Lake Date Festival. There were only 12 days remaining before the festival. Xie was getting anxious and began to worry. Huff, huff. A heavy panting sound was heard. Shortly after, a large figure squeezed into Xie's dorm. Shulishi was now much bigger and taller than 3 years ago. However, his weight had also increased accordingly. He was truly a beast now. He was fair and fat, which made him look very much like the recovery pork buns he made. This is bad. This is bad. What's the matter? Xie and Yu Jingyu looked at Shulishi in shock. Just as Xie and Yu Jingyu had similar personalities, so did Shulishi and Tang Wulin. At times, Shulishi appeared to act silly, but he and Tang Wulin were seemingly kind. However, inwardly they were crafty scoundrels. Anyone who crossed them usually ended up quite badly. Shulishi was usually quite collected, but at the moment, he was seized with panic. What happened? Why are you so flustered? Yu Jingyu asked, puzzled. Xie piped in, Fatso, what's wrong? By the way, if you don't lose some weight, can you even participate in the Sea Gods Lake Date Festival? Shulishi said pointedly, why can't I participate in it? Big brother has his ways. I'm telling you, Daiyuna and Long Yu are here at our academy. Who did you say they were? Xie was shocked. Looking puzzled, Yu Jingyu asked, why do their names ring a bell? Shulishi said, they are from Monster Academy whom we went up against in Star Luo Empire's Continental Young High-Ranking Soul Masters Elite competition. Daiyuna is a princess of Star Luo Empire. Have both of you forgotten? Long Yu was that monster with the Mountain Dragon King martial soul. After hearing Shulishi's response, their expressions changed. They asked in unison, what are they here for? Shulishi replied, from what I heard, it seems that they are both here as exchange students. Also, they'll be placed in Shrek Academy's inner court to study. They'll be our classmates. What? Yu Jingyu and Xie had strange looks on their faces. They had not paid much attention to Daiyuna, but the Dragon King Long Yu had left a deep impression on them. If it were a one-on-one, no one among the Shrek 7 monsters was his match. Tang Wulin was gravely wounded by him and nearly died in battle. Yu Jingyu had lost to Long Yu before as well. Hence, he could not help but be haunted by a ghost from his past at the mention of Long Yu's name. The two of them exchanged looks. What's he here for? Is he staging a protest? Although they had developed their skills quite rapidly within the past 3 years, there was still a distinct gap between them and Long Yu. 3 years ago, he was already an expert at the rank of a 6-ring Soul Emperor. He was also a 2-word battle armor master. It has been 3 years since. Even if he had not improved to be a 3-word battle armor master, he would still be quite powerful in terms of strength. He was not someone who they could go up against even with their current strengths. It would be unthinkable if it were a one-on-one. Shulishi shrugged, who knows? He may be here to take his revenge on us. In any case, I'm a food-type tool soul master. So, this has nothing to do with me. Better pray for your good fortunes, both of you. I have Sister Xinglan to protect me. Don't you have a spine? Yu Jingyu said, rolling his eyes. Spine? I can't eat that. Why would I need it? All right, I'm leaving. I still have some preparations to complete for the date festival. Shulishi chuckled. Yu Jingyu's eyes beamed. Fatso, which senior of the inner court do you have your eyes on now? Come on, tell us. Don't tell me you have your eyes on Wu Sidor or Xingyiran. Those two? One has thorns while the other is poisonous. You better be careful. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.